Welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me today is only Luke Jackson, and we'll explain why in just a second. But first, let me tell you who's bringing you the show today as we get ready to talk some O's baseball and just some MLB stories in general. We are brought to you in addition to the Costas Inn, it brings you all the Zooms that we do. AJ Michaels, expert and award-winning AJ Michaels Heating, AC Plumbing, and Home Performance will improve your home's energy efficiency and comfort levels. The AC season is still upon us. New rebates and discounts are available. More at ajmichaels.com. Also brought to you by Superbook Sports. We'll tell you a little bit about them as we go along. But now joining us is Luke Jackson. I started to call you Ross Grimsley, and Ross and his wife Bird live in Bradenton. And if you know anything about what's going on right now, let's keep our fingers crossed and pray for our friends down in that area, Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa, this hurricane. Luke, you remember the name? Is it Amalda?
Not sure.
Okay. It's a big one, though, and it's booming right down on the west coast of Florida. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all those folks, and let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers. All right. Luke, where do we start this week? Orioles didn't have a bad week on paper, 4-2, but they had one of the things that was maybe one of the most catastrophic things that could have occurred is that they've lost Félix Bautista for the foreseeable future. And Luke, you and I aren't doctors, and we can read between the tea leaves that if it really was season ending, why didn't they say that? But it's really hard to imagine any way, shape, or form that that Bautista comes back at all if he's given, say, a PRP injection in his owner collateral, UCL.
There you go. There you go.
There we go. I knew I had it in there. It's hard to imagine him ever coming back this year at all.
No, you're absolutely right. And typically when you hear UCL, you think Tommy John surgery. One of the Hail Mary hopes, as you mentioned, is a PRP shot. Those tend not to be particularly successful in an elbow. That tends to be, as I said, a Hail Mary shot. And so
those seem to work also if the pitcher and the team are able to rest somebody. That
right.
might be the way he could heal so he doesn't have a surgery before next year. And then you're keeping your fingers crossed that it's not May 1st and then he blows it out again.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been pitchers in the past who have pitched with a partially torn UCL. Irvin Santana pitched with one for years. But those are the exception, not the rule. Typically, when something like this happens, everyone has a feeling about what direction this is headed. I mean, we can keep our fingers crossed and hope that Big Felix doesn't have to go down that route. But we also, understand the realities of this injury. And the
reality is also that the sooner he would take care of it, the
better off he is on the back end.
On the back end, that we might be able to, instead of losing him next August 1st or August 20th, we might get him next August 20th.
Or next October.
Yeah.
Be. So yeah, everyone understands what's going on here. You feel for Felix because he's having such a magical season. He's having, one of the best seasons you can have as a closer. There are a few blown saves in there, but a couple of those were with the ghost runner on second. And I mean, he had pretty much as good of a season as you can have as a relief pitcher. And he bailed them out of so many spots with being able to go 4+ outs, sometimes 2 full innings. And he was on pace for a pretty good workload. It was on pace for about 75, 76 innings, but nothing out of the ordinary. They never pitched him 3 straight days. They kept pretty close tabs on him, but that's the nature of pitching. Whenever that arm goes up, you never know when it's going to be a bad one. So
I urge some of the people that would criticize Brandon Hyde Like, for example, the night in Philly where he brought in Cano to
Right.
pitch, and people said, "Oh, come on." He goes, "You got to win the games you can win now. You don't worry about tomorrow. You worry about that." Those same people now were probably the ones saying, "Well, why did he put him in that game Friday night?"
Right. Right.
It's a very fine line you walk, and I thought Brandon Hyde handled Bautista again. Remember, Bautista missed the last 4 to 6 weeks last season, and they were being very careful with him, but yet put the foot on the pedal when they needed him. And I thought Brandon Hyde's done kind of a masterful job at keeping him healthy.
Yeah, and remember, something as key as Felix Bautista's usage is an organizational decision.
Yep.
The way that Brandon used Felix was obviously okayed by the organization. Everyone was on board with it, and it might not have anything to do with what ultimately happened. Pitching is very stressful on the arm. It's not something that the arm was meant to do, and Felix throws with very high effort, and he's a big boy, and he throws really, really hard, and that probably increases his risk for something like this. And it's the old problem with pitching that the thing that really gives pitchers a better chance for success is higher velocity. The thing that puts them at
more at
risk
risk
is higher velocity. So it's the whole, and that's the way it's always going to be until some genius figures something out. So it's a shame, and but now the Orioles have to move forward. Obviously, you feel for Felix because he should be the one throwing the final pitch, closing out the AL East. But if they get to that point, it's going to be somebody else. They do have some quality options, and Stan wrote about one of those quality options in his column this morning for PressBoxOnline.com.
I urge everybody to read that if they get a chance. I've been a big proponent of DL Hall as relief pitcher. Do you have any way, all kidding aside, I think you'd need to inject Mike Elias with some truth serum to really understand what the plan was this season for DL Hall and why it changed last August or September.
Mm-hmm.
When they said we made the decision he's going to convert to being a relief pitcher, and the results beyond one appearance where in the third of an inning he gave up 3 runs, the other appearances his ERA was like 104 in eight other appearances. And then all of a sudden in the winter, we hear, or late fall, we're hearing that, well, he's going to stretch out again and be used as a starter. And it made no sense to me at all. And I can't quite figure out what happened to his 2023 season.
Yeah, so apparently he had a back injury in the offseason from working out, and he was healthy-ish when he reported to spring training, but his velocity wasn't back. And he didn't rebuild his velocity during spring training. He reported in Norfolk as a starter, and he was throwing like 92, 93. That's not DL Hall. And so he went back to Sarasota to basically rebuild his arm strength. And to get 100% healthy again.
And that's what they're attempting to do right now with Tyler Wells as well.
Correct. And so DL looked 100% healthy to me on Saturday. He was electric. And that's the kind of left arm they need in the bullpen. That gives them 3 quality lefties out there, 2 of whom throw gas, and another one in Danny Kalum, who is as effective as most.
He's the smoke and mirrors guy.
There's a lot of deception there, but I was sitting on the side, on the first base side on Saturday, and I was having a lot of fun watching Danny from the side because of the depth he gets on his breaking ball. It was pretty fun to watch. And so he's got 3 quality lefties in the bullpen there. And then Fuji's going to have to step up from the right side, Cano and Webb. All those guys are going to have to step up. And then we're going to need to see something from Tyler Wells as well, because I think Tyler Wells could be a key part of that 7th, 8th inning picture to bridge the gap to whomever is going to close out the game in the ninth.
I
And I think
I
go ahead.
think Cano will get the first opportunity at being quote unquote the man.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you what, the way this bullpen has evolved, I mean, CNL Perez is pitching terrific
Yep.
baseball, and Fujinami looks good. Most like 3 out of every 4 times he looks pretty darn good.
Just throw strikes, man.
Yeah, it's all he's got to do. I think they're well fortified, and Webb has been a big addition. We'll see if that carries over now. But I don't think how I'll say that their chances of winning a World Series are probably lesser without Felix Bautista.
I 100% agree with that.
But they're not off the board that there's no chance.
Right.
There's some candidates, and Hall, Fujinami, and Cano and Wells might get the job done over these next 5 weeks.
Remember, throughout a baseball season, and particularly in a playoff series, variance swamps everything. So any number of these relievers could get really hot at the right time. And that's going to be the case for probably whoever wins the World Series, is that they're going to have a collection of relievers get hot at the right time. And so we'll see how that plays out for the Orioles. They've got some guys who are capable of that, but none of whom have done it at that stage, on that stage yet. So we'll see.
All right, we will see. Orioles open up, weather permitting, and all the percentages of precipitation tonight aren't tremendously high, but they are in teens.
Mhm.
But I'm sure there are plenty of good seats available tonight to begin that 3-game series against the Chicago White Sox, and it's Kopech pitching against Grayson Rodriguez. And as we look ahead, I bring up a small topic, Luke, a little bit of a curveball to you, but the club right now has 6 starting pitchers. They also have
Okay.
John Means
Mhm.
potentially coming sometime in September. I'm not counting on it.
Right.
But the question is this: a lot of times you only need 4 starters in the playoffs.
Correct.
You really don't need as many. I'm wondering whether you think Grayson Rodriguez, not Cole Irvin, not Dean Kramer, not Kyle Gibson, Grayson Rodriguez could still emerge out of the bullpen in the postseason to be almost like the role that Tampa used about 8-9 years ago with David Price when he was an up-and-coming pitcher. That guy that comes in, you got a 4-1 lead, and it's only the 4th inning,
Mhm.
and your pitcher's kind of burnt,
Right.
and Grayson comes in, gets you out of a jam in the 4th, pitches the 5th and 6th, and into the 7th, and all of a sudden you've scored a couple more runs, and you've held on to a victory because of somebody that does it in the middle.
What I would say, that's how the Orioles used Kevin Gausman in 2014. And one thing I will say about that is that once the playoffs started to unfold, you started wondering, well, why didn't they just start Kevin Gausman? Because what plays in the playoffs is stuff. Pitch to contact doesn't play in the playoffs. That's one of the reasons why the Felix loss is so big, because stuff is what really plays in the playoffs. And from that perspective, Grayson would probably be your game 1 starter. Now, I think everyone understands that Kyle Bradish has probably earned that designation at this point, but I really think it depends on where they are with his innings. How does he look in September? Is he getting stronger as the year goes along? Because again, this kid is key to your future over the next several years. And I understand everyone wants to win the World Series this year, but you also have to do right by the kid. And he hasn't pitched very much throughout his career in pro ball. He just hasn't. And you don't want to set this kid back for years because you overextend him this time around. So I think all of that goes into play. And I think your idea is very much something that they probably have discussed. But from what you're looking for out of a starting pitcher in the playoffs, I think he's one of those guys for the Orioles. But
and look, my idea might actually be what they might be talking about with talking about Jack Flaherty right now, is where does he really fit in? Can you put him above Kyle Gibson, Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish, and Grayson? I don't think you can right now.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is that in like a situation where you have 4 starters in the playoffs, even with a really good rotation, games 3 and 4 tend to devolve into a bullpen game anyway.
No question about it.
So really, I mean, you have your top 2 starters, and then after that, you're just kind of matching up throughout the games. So if you're facing a team with a lot of left-handers, maybe that's a Cole Irvin spot. If you're in a small ballpark and you need ground balls, maybe that's a Kyle Gibson spot. If you're facing a lot of right-handers, that's a good Dean Kramer spot. So I think that throughout the playoffs, it's rare that any of these guys will go 3 times through an order anyway.
Mhm.
So, and you mentioned Means before, that could be his role as well. The guy who can pitch to the order the 3rd time through in replacing a starting pitcher. So I think all of these things are possible. I think they're all on the table. And we'll just see how it shakes out. Of course, they have to get there, but we'll see.
All right. Orioles embark upon a 3-game series tonight that closes out the homestand against the Chicago White Sox tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday afternoon. At the game time Wednesday, is that 1:05 or
1 o'clock?
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
And then they're off to Arizona.
Then they're off. They're off Thursday. They then go to Arizona for 3 games, and Arizona will be coming off of a week in which they play their rival starting tonight, the Dodgers. Orioles go to Arizona, then to Anaheim, where they'll see most likely Shohei Ohtani batting against them, unless he comes to his senses right now. I can't imagine why he would want to continue to play right now. I don't think hitting another 8 or 9 home runs is going to get him another dollar at this point, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, if he decides to get the surgery today, he's the AL MVP. So there's no more work that he has to do on that front. So it's a really interesting and unfortunate conversation coming down the pike with him, because a team is going to have to decide. Shohei is going to have to decide, does he want to continue being a 2-way player? If he does, is it as a starting pitcher? Again, this is a second Tommy John rehab. So he has to decide on that. A team signing him has to figure out, okay, once he gets the surgery, when can he come back as a hitter? We saw Bryce Harper come back very quickly as a hitter, but he wasn't also rehabbing with the idea of eventually pitching.
Yeah.
Or is it a sort of situation where he becomes kind of like a college baseball player, where he's a middle of the order hitter and he also closes? We've seen that in college baseball. So I think there are a lot of variables at play here. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion this winter about the contract that he eventually signs. Are there going to be specific clauses in there about when he starts pitching again, if he's a starting pitcher, if he's a reliever? I think there could be some fascinating conversations on that front. But it's unfortunate that his season was cut short, because really we hadn't seen anything quite like him over the past 3 years. But I'm sure what he does, what he asks of his body, is a lot. So, how much longer this can continue, who knows?
I was watching last night instead of watching the game per se, and last night was the Braves at San Francisco. I watched the K-Rod broadcast last night, and did they have loaded with guests: John Miller, Theo Epstein, and then Buster Olney. And Buster Olney was pretty clear, saying that notion of him being a relief pitcher, while it's a lot of people think it's a good idea, that's not what he envisions for himself.
Right.
He likes the notion of being a starting pitcher, and this is part and parcel of being that, is what he's going to have to go through. I mean, once you get that second one, I don't know why you would not think ahead of potentially a third one,
Right.
Because for a pitcher that's going to try and throw with what we're talking about, the velocity that he does for that many innings, 140, 150 innings, that's a lot of wear and tear on an arm.
And he doesn't get the rest that most pitchers do.
Yeah.
Or every other pitcher does.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
doesn't. And so, and there's really nothing for him, no resource for him, because he can't talk to another pitcher who's done this. So it's kind of uncharted waters for him.
It was very interesting last night. The conversation that Michael Kay and A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, had with Theo Epstein was very fascinating. And then to hear Buster Olney break down his view of where Theo goes next is very interesting, because Michael Kay was saying, yeah, he probably you're going to go back and be a general manager type, or president of baseball ops. And Buster Olney said, I don't expect him to do that. I expect him to be very involved with baseball decisions for a team, but a team that he owns part of.
Yeah.
And then they were comparing, then Michael Kay and was leading the discussion. Well, it didn't work out that great for Derek,
Right.
And they said, wait a minute, this guy, unlike Derek, this guy's been a championship World Series guy twice, with two different teams. He's got more connections in the game to put a group together that truly understands and wants him to be the lead to it. Whereas Derek kind of shot something and stuck against the wall, and he ended up part owner of that team, but that owner didn't really want him running the show.
Right.
Theo Epstein, when he does ultimately land a team, he'll have the understanding of the partners that he's the managing general partner.
Right.
I thought it was very interesting, though. Very interesting. So the Orioles have that series out in Arizona, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then on to Anaheim, and then a weird trip back east, Luke. They go to Boston for 3 games before returning home.
Yeah, and so they played Boston twice in April, and this will be the first time they have played since then. So just a weird scheduling quirk. They're done with the Blue Jays this year. They're done with the Yankees this year, but they still got plenty against the Red Sox. So we'll see how that shakes out. The Red Sox, as usual, have a great offense. They have one of the best offenses in the American League, but the starting pitching hasn't been great outside of Bello for them, and their base running has been problematic for them, and their defense hasn't been great, which is why they're fourth place in the American League East. But they're very powerful on offense, especially at their home park. So
it's interesting to have watched the last couple of weeks, though, and I have him on my fantasy team. Luke Yoshida has been really, they won't call it a benching because they'll play him enough that they don't have to answer, but he's not playing every day now.
He hit the wall.
Yeah, he hit a wall. The only thing that may gain him some more playing time is Duran is hurt right now. But between Verdugo, who's coming back, and Duvall, and some others that they have there,
Justin Turner, your guy.
Well, that
having
was
a nice year for them.
Yeah, he's having a great year. Terrific player. Would have looked really good in an Oriole uniform. Really would have. Hey, now is the time to place your baseball bets and your preseason football bets. Well, you can't do that anymore. Got to get ready for the regular season. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use the promo code StanCharles23. That happens to be my name, Luke. StanCharles23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles, all one word with no spaces. And seriously, folks, for those of you out there who've been longtime Stan the Fan fans and always wondered what they could do to help me, this would be great if you signed up and used that promo code StanCharles23. Don't miss out this season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code StanCharles23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And Luke, got to tell people about the Costas Inn, and I will do that before we get off the air. But that series in Boston, it's just a weird trip to me. Second West Coast trip in 3 weeks, and jammed at the end of it. Instead of coming back home, they got that trip to Boston before coming home. against St. Louis for 3, and then Tampa Bay for 4. And Luke, that Tampa Bay Rays club, which I think you would have agreed with me about 10, 12 days ago, it looked like with the Wander Franco story playing out the way it's playing, that he wasn't going to be able to play anymore this year, that they were all but, their goose was all but cooked. And they've won, I think, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, something like that.
Yeah, Kevin Cash does a really nice job of pulling names out of the hat, and they're productive. Just and it just seems like that's what's happening in Tampa Bay right now. But yeah, so like Yandy Diaz has had a terrific year. He's been one of the best hitters in the American League. He's really stepped it up even more of late. Brandon Lau, they got some big hits out of him this weekend. The former Terp, who has killed the Orioles throughout the years.
He got in some choice comments.
Oh yeah, he had some words for the Yankees. Yeah,
for the Yankees, the last place team, and we got more important things to worry about than a scuffle with them, or something like that.
Isaac Paredes has had a really nice year for them.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing to me is how they basically made up a rotation out of thin air on the fly. Zach Littell, like apparently he's a quality starting pitcher now.
Right.
Erasmo Ramirez, apparently it's 2017 again. So, I mean, it's like the names they come up with, like I said, just pulling them out of a hat and boom, productive. So, yeah, Kevin Cash doing it, spinning it again down there.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. They had that incredible first 80 games this season. Then they had about a 50 game period where they were still okay, weren't that great. And now all of a sudden they've won 9 of their last 12 games these last 2 weeks. And, they moved back up in my power rankings to number
5, I believe.
Number
6
or 6.
Number 6.
And they play, wait a minute, hold on. Got one more week to pass up here. This week, Tampa Bay hosts the Marlins. No, they go to Miami for 2, and then they go to Cleveland for 3. So a week where they can keep their momentum going, it looks like, but with just 5 games this week.
Speaking of Miami, you know who the new closer is down there?
Tanner Scott?
Yep.
Is it really?
David Robertson lost his closer role because he has really scuffled since being traded over from the Mets. Egg on my face because I thought he would be a really nice fit in the Orioles bullpen.
I have a very good friend of mine, another friend of mine, you're a friend of mine as well, wanted the same thing, and he was still bringing it up to me yesterday. And I said, have you noticed how Robertson's pitching,
Right.
But,
so Tanner Scott, who has had a really quality year, one of the better left-handed relievers in baseball, fastball up to 99. He's throwing more strikes. And when he throws strikes, he's really tough to beat. So he's the closer down there now. So
who did we get for him?
They got the draft pick that turned into Judd Fabian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're pretty happy with that right now. All right, Luke, what else this week? Anything else of great note in the world of baseball?
Scan your power rankings here. Texas, I believe, has lost like 10 of 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Nathan Eovaldi, again, had a little setback, tightness in his side. So
it's like an oblique.
That's right. They're going to have to I mean, they have, as you said in your power rankings, they really need him back bad. And I don't know when that's going to happen. And now Seattle, who you have as 4th in your power rankings, they have been the best team in the American League in the second half. They actually subtracted from their bullpen at the deadline, trading away Paul Sewald, but they got some very badly needed left-handed bench bats in return for him that have really allowed them to mix and match, especially late in games. They were a little right-handed heavy in the first half, and they punched out at an historic rate during that first half. Now they have a few more lefty bats for Scott Service to play with late in games to match up a little bit better against right-handed starters too. But yeah, that Mariners starting rotation. Whew. I think the Mariners might have like 3 or 4 of the best 10 best starters in the American League.
I know.
I mean, it's been remarkable.
And they're doing it without a former Cy Young Award that they spent big bucks to sign, Robbie Ray, but they have Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller,
George
Kirby,
and Brian Wu, who's been really good.
Brian Woohoo.
He's been good for them. So
yes, he has.
Let's see. Anything else here? You mentioned in your blurb about the Phillies, yeah, the great crowds
Yeah,
that they've gotten this year.
great sports town, really
Right,
a lot of
right. And
character.
it's and you mentioned how when you watch a game there, it's almost like the home crowd can will them to a victory because of how energized that park is. And you see it every time you turn on a game in Philadelphia. It's a great atmosphere. So yeah, those are the things that really stuck out to me in your power rankings. With the
Luke,
biggest one being Seattle making the trip up to number 4.
yeah, it's not to make light of this, what I'm going to talk about now. Apparently, there was a shooting inside Chicago's stadium, the
Mhm.
White Sox stadium yesterday. I think somebody was killed, and I think
I don't think so. I don't think there were
okay,
any.
but
I
there was
don't.
there wasn't a
It
fatality
was very mysterious what exactly
occurred.
unfolded, but I don't think there were any injuries or deaths or anything like that. I
Okay,
don't think.
okay, but it's that's a terrible thing, and it just goes to show you there's no question that the Freddie Gray riots, and I know the Orioles probably wouldn't appreciate this being even talked about, but I'm talking about it in a way to try and assuage the fears of people to go downtown. If you're going in for a baseball game, I'm just telling you, the chances of something happening are just so minuscule to be beyond belief, because right now the Orioles are in the midst of one of the best seasons in the club's last 25, 30 years, Luke. And you still get to a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the crowds just aren't what they should be, but
Yeah,
yet you give away on a Saturday night, you give away a bobblehead and you got 42,000 people there. Isn't the baseball enough? Really? I mean, all
yeah,
these people that add up the bobbleheads they've gotten, the 50 bobbleheads you've gotten over the last 20 years, that's really going to bring you a lot of money. That's worth going out for. But going out to see the Orioles play when they're in a real pennant race, that's not worth it Monday through Thursday. Because I can tell you tonight's crowd, I'll bet it'll be 22
it might be
thousand
less than
people.
that because it's not an attractive opponent. A, and it's the first day of school.
Yep.
So, I mean, I would expect it to be a pretty light crowd tonight. And I mean, one thing I will say is this: I've actually talked about this um, uh, with John Colson of Press Box, who both of us know as well. And I said, John, how do you think the Orioles can build up weeknight crowds? Because he's into marketing, he knows how
Yeah.
this stuff operates and things like that. He said, the first thing that I would do is that I would focus on packing it in as much as I possibly can on the weekends. And so you get people down there for weekend games. And if you go down there for a weekend game that's packed, first of all, it's hard to find any parking close. And it's, the ballpark is like 30 years old and it can show its age a little bit in a sellout crowd.
Yeah.
And if you're at one, and it can just be, it can be there's a lot going on, and you go down there, and in that kind of situation it's very easy to say, you know what, we should try this on a weeknight when it's not quite as crowded, there's more elbow room, there's more room to spread out, there's more room to breathe. And John said that once that happens, once weekends are packed, you'll have more and more people saying, you know what, let's go down on a weeknight. It's a lot easier to park. It's a lot easier. Everything's just a lot easier. And you plan your day around it in the sense that maybe you get off work a little early, whatever.
Yeah.
And
One
I
one of
think,
my big ideas for years has been, I think the club should really turn the Monday through Thursdays into almost how a product buys space in a supermarket. You pay for the location of your goods, you pay
Mhm,
for it. I think the Orioles need to do some really extensive, different type of giveaways during the weeknights.
mhm,
Maybe like akin to when Ollie's used to sponsor the Friday nights. Maybe have a tire company or an appliance company and give away 10 washing machines or something like that. I think you need to just, it's like a record, the needle is stuck in the same groove. You
right.
need to push it to get the music playing. They need to do something that just says, hey, let's go out there tonight. We might be able to win a car, or we might be able to win this or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
and also, I mean, there's the reality of the situation in terms of just, as you say, like compared to a place like Philadelphia, there's just a lot more available people to put in those seats in a
No
place like
question about it.
Philadelphia than there is in Baltimore post 2005. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to make excuses. That's reality. And so
Very well said.
and I think MLB considers Baltimore a bottom 5 market, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of household shares,
Yeah,
vis-a-vis
probably.
TVs. So that's reality. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for anybody. But that being said, over the next couple of years, I think you will see more people because again, attendance lags. So you have a great season, the attendance is going to tick up the next year and the
Yep.
year after.
It should.
So and so hopefully
Unless you have to raise ticket prices tremendously
oh yeah, the hot
to
dogs
keep
are not
some of
going to
the
be 50
players.
bucks. Yeah,
Right.
it's not. Yeah, I forgot. You know what? I totally forgot about that. And so that's a very good point, Stan. And so got me off my train of thought. But
Yeah.
anyway, yes, I think I think we made our point.
Yeah. Hey, that's going to wrap us up for today. Before Luke gets out of here, I got to remind everybody out there that the Costas Inn helps pay the cost for us to put on these Zooms twice per week. I'll be on Wednesday at 5 o'clock with Dr. Sandy Siegel of Chesapeake Urology. And he's got his big race, the Zero Prostate Challenge, coming up. And we'll get into all the details about that on Wednesday at 5 o'clock with Dr. Sandy Siegel. But getting back to the Costas Inn, still not too late to get crabs. Make your plans to go down to the Costas Inn and eat some of the best crabs around, whether they're Maryland crabs or Texas and Louisiana. They cook them up, they steam them up Maryland style. They taste fantastic, but it's not easy to always count on being able to walk in to a big crab place and just walk in and say, hey, I want 3 dozen crabs. Plan ahead, call 410-477-1975. Put your crabs aside, get the price point you want. Mine are, I like the extra large. Some people like the whales. They're about another $30, $40 a dozen, but they are monsters at the Costas Inn. But the extra large are plenty big enough. And they've got all the great salads, soups, and sides. Crab cakes might be your thing. Maybe you don't like picking crabs, crab cakes, crab soup. You don't have to pick it. It's all in there for you. All right. Costas Inn, boy, my mouth's watering right now, Luke.
I want some crab cakes, man.
We can do it. We'll do it when Ross is in town.
Yeah.
And by the way, again, our well wishes to the folks in the immediate range of this hurricane that is zooming toward west coast of Florida. Praying for everybody down there. All right. That does it for us today. Luke and I and Ross will be on next Monday at 4 o'clock. For now, actually, we're going to end up having to change that. We're not going to do Labor Day at 4 o'clock,
Correct.
Luke. We'll
Correct.
probably be on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. All right. That does it for us today. That's it for now. Talk to you soon. Bye.